For nearly 4 decades, people have replayed the same 87 seconds, convinced that one more viewing might reveal the answer everyone else missed. Engineers studied the technology. Historians reconstructed the timeline. Countless theories have come and gone. Yet the greatest question remains exactly where it began. Who stood behind the mask, and why did they leave behind a mystery instead of an explanation? If you are watching this right now, I want to ask you something. What really happened? Because every case you are about to hear has one thing in common. The investigation was closed. The file was sealed. And the truth was never found. These are the cases that detectives couldn't solve, that witnesses couldn't explain, and that official records couldn't account for. If you are someone who needs to know what really happened, you are in the right place. Subscribe to Unsolved Vault and join thousands of investigators uncovering the case's history left unfinished. Welcome back. This is Unsolved Vault. And today, we open a case that was never meant to stay closed. Across the decades, the mystery gathered more than investigators. It attracted engineers, broadcast enthusiasts, documentary makers, historians, and curious viewers who approached the same recording from remarkably different directions. Old videotapes, technical diagrams, archived newspaper reports, and handwritten notes gradually formed an unusual collection of evidence. None of these objects solved the case on their own, yet together they created a landscape where every small observation seemed capable of opening an entirely new path toward understanding the unknown broadcaster behind the interruption. Listening to discussions surrounding the hijacking reveals an atmosphere very different from the original broadcast itself. Technical language blends with personal memories, while quiet confidence often gives way to thoughtful uncertainty. Some voices focus on signal strength and transmission paths. Others linger over fragments of dialogue or subtle gestures captured on the recording. Every conversation carries the sound of careful curiosity rather than certainty, as though each participant has discovered one small piece of a puzzle whose complete image continues to remain just beyond clear view. As years passed, the balance between evidence and interpretation slowly began to shift. New generations encountered the recording through documentaries, internet forums, and restored video copies instead of live television. Digital tools allowed viewers to enlarge frames, isolate audio, and compare observations with remarkable precision. At the same time, every technological improvement encouraged fresh theories that often challenged older assumptions. Instead of narrowing the mystery toward one accepted explanation, each advance quietly expanded the range of possibilities under consideration. Perhaps this is why the Max Headroom hijacking continues to invite debate long after the original investigation reached its limits. An unsolved mystery creates an unusual space where imagination must remain disciplined by evidence. Yet evidence rarely answers every important question. Each theory offers the comfort of a possible explanation while introducing another uncertainty that cannot easily be dismissed. In that quiet tension between knowledge and speculation, the mystery has found an enduring life, encouraging every generation to examine the same brief recording and wonder whether the next careful observation might finally reveal what every earlier search had overlooked. One of the earliest and most persistent theories suggests that the hijacking was carried out by someone with professional broadcasting experience. Supporters of this idea point to the technical precision required to interrupt 2 separate television stations within the same evening. The unknown operator appeared to understand microwave relay systems, transmission timing, and the practical limits of broadcast equipment. These observations have led many researchers to believe that the individual was not learning through experimentation during the event. Instead, they may have been applying knowledge gained through years of working with television technology. At first glance, this explanation appears persuasive. Engineers responsible for maintaining broadcast systems naturally possessed the expertise needed to understand how signals traveled across a city. Camera operators, transmission technicians, and studio engineers also worked within environments where specialized equipment was part of everyday life. Such people understood the difference between ordinary broadcasting and the narrow opportunity required to overpower a relay signal. Yet the theory begins to weaken when examined more closely. Technical knowledge alone cannot identify a specific individual, and no confirmed evidence has ever connected a broadcasting professional directly to the hijacking. Another widely discussed possibility focuses on advanced hobbyists rather than industry employees. During the 1980s, communities of amateur radio operators and electronics enthusiasts often built sophisticated equipment themselves. Many possessed impressive technical abilities despite having no connection to commercial television stations. They experimented with transmitters, antennas, and signal propagation as both a hobby and an educational pursuit. Researchers who favor this explanation argue that an experienced enthusiast, working with carefully assembled equipment and detailed planning, might have achieved the necessary signal strength without belonging to the broadcasting industry. This alternative also raises difficult questions. Building capable transmitting equipment required knowledge, patience, and resources, but carrying out the hijacking demanded more than technical construction. The operator also needed accurate timing, familiarity with local broadcast infrastructure, and confidence under considerable pressure. Those requirements suggest preparation extending well beyond casual experimentation. While skilled hobbyists certainly existed, investigators never identified anyone whose known activities matched every practical element required by the case. The theory remains technically possible, yet it lacks the evidence needed to move beyond thoughtful speculation. What makes these two explanations especially interesting is that they compete without fully excluding one another. A broadcasting professional could also have been an enthusiastic electronics experimenter. An amateur operator might have gained knowledge through friendships within the television industry. The available evidence leaves room for both possibilities because it describes skills rather than identity. Every technical observation appears to point toward competence, but competence belongs to many different people. That uncertainty explains why decades of discussion have produced strong arguments instead of definitive answers. Each theory resolves part of the technical puzzle while leaving the central question unchanged. Who possessed the right combination of knowledge, opportunity, and intention on that extraordinary evening? And why has no reliable evidence ever connected that individual to the broadcast that still echoes through television history? Another group of theories moves away from technical identity and looks instead at motive. Some researchers believe the hijacking was intended as an elaborate act of satire rather than sabotage. They point to the unusual choice of the Max Headroom character, whose fictional world already questioned the growing influence of television, advertising, and media culture. From this perspective, the interruption becomes less a random prank and more a carefully staged performance. The strange dialogue, exaggerated gestures, and deliberately confusing tone may have been designed to mock the authority of television itself, rather than to communicate a direct political or personal message. This interpretation gains some support from the recording's unusual structure. The unknown broadcaster never demanded money, announced a political cause, or attempted to persuade viewers to follow a particular belief. Instead, the performance wandered through fragmented references, odd humor, and seemingly disconnected remarks. Such behavior feels unusual when compared with many public demonstrations or criminal broadcasts, which typically seek recognition or influence. The absence of a clear objective has encouraged some observers to view the interruption as a form of performance art, where confusion itself became part of the intended experience rather than an accidental consequence. Others have proposed a more personal explanation. Several comments made during the longer hijacking appeared to reference local television personalities and broadcasting culture. This has led to speculation that the individual behind the mask may have held a private grievance connected to the industry. Perhaps they felt overlooked, frustrated, or amused by people working in local media. Yet this idea quickly encounters familiar difficulties. Without knowing the identity of the speaker, it is impossible to judge whether those remarks reflected genuine personal experience or were simply selected because they sounded unusual. The recording offers hints, but no reliable context explaining why those particular references were chosen. A smaller number of theories suggest that the broadcast may have involved more than one person. The technical demands of transmitting the signal, operating recording equipment, managing the performance, and monitoring timing could have been easier with assistance. Some researchers imagine a small group working together, each responsible for a different task. Others argue that a highly organized individual could have completed the operation alone with careful preparation. The available evidence neither confirms nor excludes either possibility. Every practical reconstruction depends upon assumptions about equipment and planning that remain impossible to verify with certainty. Taken together, these ideas reveal an important pattern. Each theory begins by explaining one aspect of the mystery, whether it concerns technical skill, personal motive, artistic expression, or group involvement. Yet each explanation soon encounters details that refuse to fit comfortably within its own framework. The recording behaves almost like a mirror, reflecting different conclusions depending upon the questions asked of it. That quality has allowed thoughtful disagreement to continue for decades. Instead of guiding everyone toward one destination, the evidence quietly supports several plausible paths while refusing to declare that any single one leads all the way to the truth. Perhaps the most revealing aspect of the competing theories is not which one appears strongest, but why none has ever displaced the others. Each explanation rests upon genuine observations drawn from the recording, the investigation, or the technical realities of broadcasting. None depends entirely upon fantasy. Yet each also reaches a point where evidence gives way to interpretation. That quiet transition has preserved the mystery for decades. The known facts form a solid foundation, but every attempt to build a complete explanation eventually encounters unanswered questions that cannot honestly be resolved. The arrival of the internet gave these discussions an entirely new life. Archived recordings became widely available, allowing viewers across the world to examine the interruption frame by frame. Online communities gathered engineers, historians, media researchers, and curious newcomers in the same conversations. Fresh analyses appeared alongside older theories, often challenging long-accepted assumptions with restored video, improved audio processing, or forgotten newspaper reports. Instead of replacing earlier ideas, these contributions expanded the discussion, proving that wider access to evidence can sometimes increase curiosity rather than reduce it. Over time, the mystery also became a lesson in historical restraint. Many famous unsolved cases attract dramatic claims from people seeking attention, but the Max Headroom hijacking has resisted easy conclusions. Numerous rumors have circulated, and various individuals have occasionally been suggested as possible participants, yet none of those claims has been supported by evidence strong enough to satisfy investigators or historians. The absence of reliable confirmation has encouraged careful researchers to distinguish between possibilities that are technically plausible and conclusions that can actually be demonstrated. That distinction protects the integrity of the story, even when certainty remains beyond reach. In the end, the theories tell us almost as much about the search for answers as they do about the hijacking itself. They reveal how people respond when confronted with an event that offers abundant evidence but incomplete understanding. Engineers search for technical solutions. Historians reconstruct context. Media scholars examine symbolism. Viewers return to the recording with fresh questions shaped by their own experiences. Each perspective uncovers something valuable, yet none uncovers everything. The Max Headroom hijacking continues to occupy that rare place where evidence remains visible, curiosity remains active, and certainty remains quietly out of reach. Perhaps that is why the mystery has endured for so long. It invites careful thought without demanding agreement, allowing every generation to continue the search while accepting that some of history's most compelling secrets may never fully surrender their final answer. The investigation has reached its limits, but the search for answers is only beginning. Next, we step into the competing theories that have kept this mystery alive for generations, where every explanation solves one puzzle while creating another. Long before digital streaming became part of everyday life, television depended upon invisible pathways stretching across cities, mountains, coastlines, and open countryside. Transmission towers rose above skylines, satellite dishes faced distant horizons, and microwave relays quietly linked one broadcast center to another. These structures appeared solid and permanent, giving the impression of complete control. Yet the signals traveling between them moved through open air, following physical laws rather than locked doors, creating a network that was both remarkably reliable and unexpectedly exposed. To most viewers, that hidden system carried no sound of uncertainty. A program appeared with familiar voices, balanced audio, and steady pictures that encouraged confidence in the technology behind them. The faint hiss of analog television, the gentle flicker of a cathode ray screen, and the routine arrival of evening broadcasts blended into ordinary life. Because the experience felt effortless, almost nobody considered the invisible journey completed before those images reached the quiet comfort of a living room. As broadcasting expanded across different countries, small interruptions occasionally appeared in unexpected places. Most resulted from equipment faults, severe weather, or accidental interference that engineers quickly corrected. A much smaller number followed another path entirely. Unknown signals briefly replaced authorized broadcasts, surprising audiences before disappearing almost as quickly as they had arrived. Each incident differed in method, location, and purpose. Yet together they revealed subtle cracks within a communication system that many people had assumed was nearly impossible to challenge. Looking beyond Chicago changes the meaning of the Max Headroom mystery. Instead of standing alone as an isolated curiosity, it becomes part of a wider history shaped by technology, opportunity, and human ingenuity. The interruption remains extraordinary because of its execution and lasting influence, but it also reminds us that every sophisticated system carries hidden assumptions beneath its polished surface. Those assumptions often remain invisible until one unexpected moment quietly exposes them, inviting us to reconsider how secure familiar technologies truly are. Long before the Max Headroom hijacking captured international attention, broadcasters in different parts of the world had already encountered unexpected intrusions into their transmissions. Most were brief, technically limited, and quickly forgotten outside the communities that experienced them. Some involved accidental interference from powerful transmitters operating on nearby frequencies. Others appeared to be deliberate attempts by individuals testing the limits of broadcast technology. While these incidents rarely gained lasting public attention, they quietly reminded engineers that television signals, despite their apparent authority, traveled through an environment that could never be completely isolated. The methods behind these interruptions varied considerably. In some cases, unauthorized radio transmissions briefly disrupted television pictures without replacing the broadcast entirely. Elsewhere, pirate broadcasters experimented with local transmissions that reached only small audiences before being detected. A few incidents involved people using homemade equipment to interfere with communication systems as technical demonstrations rather than acts intended for widespread attention. These events differed greatly in scale, but they shared one important characteristic. Each depended upon understanding how broadcast signals moved through physical space instead of relying on access to television studios themselves. Engineers responded to these challenges by improving procedures rather than assuming complete security. Transmission sites adopted stronger monitoring practices. Equipment became more reliable, and communication between broadcasters and technical authorities grew increasingly organized. Yet absolute protection remained difficult because broadcasting depended upon physics as much as engineering. Radio waves traveled beyond fences, buildings, and property lines. Once a signal entered open air, it occupied a landscape that could be observed by anyone with suitable receiving equipment. Protecting that signal, therefore, required constant attention rather than permanent solutions. The Max Headroom hijacking stood apart because it combined technical success with an unforgettable public performance. Many earlier signal intrusions attracted little interest beyond engineering circles because viewers experienced only brief distortion or temporary loss of reception. The Chicago incident was different. Instead of interrupting television with meaningless interference, the unknown broadcaster delivered a carefully staged appearance that immediately captured public imagination. The technical achievement and the theatrical presentation became inseparable, transforming what might have remained an obscure engineering incident into a cultural mystery remembered around the world. When viewed alongside these lesser-known events, an important pattern begins to emerge. Broadcast technology has always balanced remarkable reliability with unavoidable physical realities. Every improvement in transmission systems strengthened ordinary broadcasting, while also encouraging specialists to think more carefully about unexpected possibilities. The rare individuals who challenged those systems often revealed weaknesses that engineers had already considered unlikely rather than impossible. This broader history does not reduce the uniqueness of the Max Headroom hijacking. Instead, it places the event within a longer story about communication itself, where innovation continually inspires new forms of protection while quietly reminding us that every technological achievement carries limits waiting to be discovered by someone determined enough to look beyond accepted expectations. Among the lesser-known broadcast intrusions, one detail appears again and again. The objective was rarely to take control for an extended period. Instead, the interruption itself became the achievement. A few seconds of unauthorized transmission could demonstrate remarkable technical ability, proving that a determined individual had reached a system intended for authorized broadcasters alone. Once that goal had been accomplished, many intrusions ended almost immediately. Their importance lay not in how long they lasted, but in the fact that they happened at all. This pattern helps place the Max Headroom hijacking into a broader technical context. The unknown operator remained on screen for only a brief time, yet those moments were carefully used. The appearance was distinctive, the timing deliberate, and the execution confident enough to suggest preparation rather than improvisation. Every second increased the possibility of detection, making a prolonged broadcast both risky and unnecessary. From a practical standpoint, completing the transmission successfully may have been far more important than extending it beyond the available opportunity. Broadcast engineers often describe security as a process of reducing risk instead of eliminating it entirely. Every communication network must balance efficiency, reliability, and protection while continuing to serve millions of ordinary users. During the analog era, that balance depended upon equipment spread across large geographical areas, connected through relay points that could not always be watched continuously. Engineers understood these practical realities and designed systems that were dependable under normal conditions. Extraordinary situations, however, occasionally revealed weaknesses that routine operation had never fully exposed. The Chicago hijacking arrived during a period when broadcasting technology was approaching significant change. Satellite distribution expanded, digital systems slowly emerged, and network architecture evolved in ways that gradually altered how television reached viewers. As these developments continued, many of the techniques associated with analog transmission became less central to everyday broadcasting. Some of the specific circumstances that made earlier signal intrusions possible also became increasingly difficult to reproduce, not because curiosity disappeared, but because the underlying technology changed with each passing generation. Looking back from the present, these incidents offer more than technical history. They reveal the continuing relationship between innovation and adaptation. Every advance in communication encourages confidence, yet it also inspires people to explore unexpected possibilities within that new environment. Engineers respond by improving safeguards, researchers document the lessons learned, and future systems grow stronger because earlier vulnerabilities were understood rather than ignored. The Max Headroom hijacking occupies a distinctive place within that ongoing story. It was not simply an isolated curiosity, nor merely an unusual television prank. It became one of the clearest reminders that the strength of any communication system is measured not only by how well it performs during ordinary moments, but also by what it teaches when something extraordinary briefly interrupts the signal. As broadcasters reflected on these rare interruptions, the lessons extended far beyond a single technical failure. Engineers recognized that every communication system exists within a changing environment shaped by technology, human behavior, and practical limitations. Security could never depend solely upon stronger equipment. It also required continuous observation, updated procedures, and an awareness that unexpected ideas often emerge from people studying familiar systems in unfamiliar ways. The most valuable improvements frequently arrived not after routine operation, but after unusual events revealed assumptions that had quietly gone unquestioned. The Max Headroom hijacking eventually became part of engineering discussions, media history, and public memory for different reasons. Technical specialists examined the event as an example of analog broadcast vulnerability. Historians viewed it as a rare cultural moment that reflected the relationship between technology and society during the late 1980s. Viewers remembered something far simpler. They remembered the strange feeling of watching ordinary television suddenly become unpredictable. That shared experience gave the incident a lasting place beyond technical literature, allowing it to survive in popular conversation long after many comparable signal intrusions had faded from memory. Modern broadcasting has changed dramatically since that November evening in Chicago. Digital transmission, encrypted distribution methods, automated monitoring systems, and more sophisticated network design have reduced many of the specific weaknesses associated with analog broadcasting. Yet no technological era has completely escaped new challenges. As communication systems become more advanced, they also become more complex, introducing different forms of risk that earlier generations never needed to consider. The details evolve, but the underlying principle remains familiar. Every innovation invites careful protection because no system exists entirely beyond the reach of determined human curiosity. Perhaps that is the quiet legacy hidden beneath the Max Headroom mystery. It is remembered not only because an unknown figure briefly interrupted two television broadcasts, but because the event revealed something larger about the technologies people trust every day. Invisible systems often appear strongest when they work so smoothly that nobody notices them. Only an unexpected disruption encourages people to recognize the intricate structures operating beneath ordinary experience. The broadcast that puzzled Chicago for a few unforgettable minutes ultimately became part of a much broader history, one that stretches across decades of communication, engineering, and adaptation. In the next part, the focus narrows once more, returning to the mystery itself and exploring why this brief interruption continues to resist explanation, preserving its place as one of television's most enduring unsolved stories. The theories offer intriguing possibilities, yet none can claim certainty. Before we reach the end of the story, we need to look beyond Chicago itself and discover why this unusual broadcast became part of a much larger history of communication and technological change. The original broadcast equipment that carried the Max Headroom hijacking gradually disappeared from everyday use. Analog transmitters were replaced, relay systems evolved, and television entered a digital era shaped by new methods of distribution. Many of the physical components connected to the case found their place in storage rooms, museums, or technical history. The interruption itself, however, survived in a different form. Preserved on videotapes and later copied into digital archives, it continued to travel far beyond the world that had first produced it. Encountering the mystery changed with each generation. Viewers who had watched the interruption live remembered surprise and confusion, while younger audiences often discovered it through documentaries, online discussions, or carefully restored recordings. The experience felt different, yet curiosity emerged in much the same way. A short video, unfamiliar voices, and an unidentified performer invited quiet questions that lingered long after the recording ended. The mystery adapted naturally to every new platform where people gathered to exchange observations and compare interpretations. As the internet expanded, the story quietly found new audiences across the world. Archivists preserved broadcast recordings that might otherwise have disappeared, journalists revisited forgotten reports, and filmmakers returned to the unanswered investigation with fresh perspectives. Online communities compared technical evidence, collected historical documents, and corrected small errors that had circulated for years. Every rediscovery introduced the hijacking to people who had never experienced analog television, allowing the mystery to move from personal memory into a shared digital history that continued to grow. Perhaps that lasting presence reveals something beyond the interruption itself. Most television broadcasts are created for a single evening before fading into routine memory, yet unresolved events often follow a different path. They invite repeated examination because every generation approaches them with new tools, different assumptions, and fresh questions. The Max Headroom hijacking became more than an unsolved broadcast. It slowly transformed into a cultural legend, reminding us that history is sometimes preserved not by complete answers, but by the enduring absence of them. As the years passed, the Max Headroom hijacking slowly crossed an invisible boundary. It was no longer remembered only as an unusual incident in broadcast history. Instead, it became part of a growing collection of modern mysteries that continued to attract attention despite the absence of new evidence. Journalists revisited the case whenever anniversaries approached. Documentary filmmakers searched through archives for forgotten details. Historians examined the event within the wider story of television, while internet communities approached the same material with the patience of long-term investigators. Each generation inherited the mystery rather than leaving it behind. One reason for this lasting fascination lies in the unusual balance between evidence and uncertainty. Many historical mysteries suffer because very little information survives. The Max Headroom hijacking presents the opposite situation. The interruption was recorded, preserved, and viewed countless times. Investigators documented the event, broadcasters described their technical response, and newspapers reported the public reaction. Viewers are therefore not searching for a missing event. They are examining an event that can be watched repeatedly while its most important question continues to resist explanation. The evidence feels unusually close, yet the identity behind it remains distant. The internet transformed that experience in important ways. Earlier discussions were often limited to local communities, specialist publications, or television documentaries shown at specific times. Online archives removed many of those barriers. Anyone with curiosity could compare restored recordings, read historical articles, study engineering diagrams, and participate in conversations with people living thousands of miles away. Amateur researchers sometimes uncovered forgotten interviews or local newspaper reports that had received little attention during the original investigation. Professional historians occasionally corrected popular misunderstandings that had quietly spread through repeated retelling. Together, these contributions created a living archive that continued to evolve. This process also revealed an unexpected quality of the mystery. The more accessible the evidence became, the more carefully people examined the smallest details. Individual frames were enlarged. Background sounds were isolated. Clothing, props, gestures, and fragments of dialogue were discussed with remarkable attention. Some observations proved valuable by correcting earlier assumptions. Others inspired imaginative theories that could not be verified. Both outcomes reflected the same human instinct. Faced with an unanswered question, people naturally searched for meaning within details that earlier viewers had barely noticed. Unlike many famous mysteries, however, the Max Headroom hijacking has resisted dramatic reinvention. The central facts have remained surprisingly stable over the decades. Researchers continue to debate interpretation rather than rewriting the historical record itself. That quiet consistency has helped preserve the credibility of the case. Instead of becoming a legend built entirely upon exaggeration, it has remained anchored to a brief, documented broadcast that anyone can examine firsthand. Perhaps that balance explains its remarkable endurance. The mystery offers enough evidence to invite serious investigation, enough uncertainty to sustain genuine curiosity, and enough authenticity to ensure that every new generation feels it is discovering the unanswered questions for itself. Another reason the mystery has endured is that it belongs to an unusual moment in technological history. The hijacking took place during the final years of analog broadcasting, when television still carried a sense of shared experience. Millions of viewers watched the same programs at the same time, creating moments that entire communities remembered together. When the interruption appeared, it briefly entered that common space. It was not hidden inside a private recording or discovered years later in an archive. It happened in real time, before an audience that never expected television itself to become part of the story. As broadcasting technology evolved, that shared experience became less common. Digital platforms offered greater choice, allowing audiences to watch different programs whenever they wished. While this transformation expanded access to media, it also changed how unexpected events spread through public awareness. The Max Headroom hijacking remained rooted in an era when a single interruption could immediately become a topic of conversation across an entire city. That historical setting gives the event a distinctive character that later generations often find difficult to recreate, even while studying it through modern technology. Popular culture also played an important role in preserving the mystery. References to the hijacking appeared in books, documentaries, podcasts, television programs, and online discussions devoted to unusual historical events. These appearances rarely claimed to solve the case. Instead, they introduced new audiences to the unanswered questions surrounding the broadcast. Each retelling added another layer to the story's reputation, ensuring that curiosity continued even among people with little knowledge of analog television or broadcast engineering. The mystery gradually became recognized not simply as an isolated incident, but as one of the defining unsolved events in media history. At the same time, serious researchers remained careful to separate documented facts from speculation. Archivists preserved original recordings rather than relying upon edited copies. Historians returned to contemporary newspaper reports instead of repeating unsupported rumors. Engineers continued to explain the technical realities behind analog transmission, helping audiences understand what was genuinely possible and what belonged only to imagination. This steady attention to evidence prevented the mystery from drifting too far from its historical foundation, even as public interest continued to grow. That balance between careful research and enduring curiosity is remarkably uncommon. Many legends survive because facts become increasingly uncertain over time. The Max Headroom hijacking followed a different path. The evidence remained accessible, the recording survived, and the technical context became better understood. Yet none of those advantages answered the central question that had puzzled investigators from the beginning. Instead, each new examination deepened appreciation for the complexity of the case. The mystery endured not because history had forgotten it, but because history had preserved just enough to keep the search alive while quietly withholding the one answer everyone hoped to find. In many ways, the Max Headroom hijacking has become more than a mystery about an unidentified broadcaster. It has become a story about memory itself. Every few years, another article, documentary, or discussion introduces the event to people who have never heard of it before. They watch the same 87 seconds, notice familiar details, and ask remarkably similar questions. Time has changed the technology surrounding the recording, yet it has not reduced the quiet fascination created by those brief moments on screen. The mystery continues to renew itself through every generation that encounters it for the first time. The case also demonstrates how historical mysteries survive in the digital age. Instead of fading into forgotten archives, they become living records shaped by preservation, collaboration, and careful examination. Original broadcasts are restored, newspaper collections are digitized, and technical documents become available to audiences far beyond their original locations. Each contribution strengthens the historical record while inviting fresh perspectives. The search gradually becomes less about discovering hidden material and more about understanding familiar evidence with greater patience and deeper context. There is an unusual honesty within this process. Researchers continue to investigate, fully aware that a definitive solution may never appear. That awareness does not discourage curiosity. Instead, it encourages careful thinking and respect for the limits of available evidence. Every responsible investigation acknowledges the difference between a convincing possibility and a proven conclusion. In that sense, the mystery has become an example of thoughtful historical inquiry, reminding us that unanswered questions can still teach valuable lessons about technology, culture, and the methods people use to understand the past. Perhaps that is the quiet reason the Max Headroom hijacking refuses to disappear. It survives because it exists at the meeting point of documented history and enduring uncertainty. The recording is real. The investigation was real. The unanswered questions are equally real. Together, they have transformed a brief interruption of television into one of the most recognizable unsolved events in modern media history. Decades have passed. Broadcasting has entered an entirely different era, and countless viewers have replayed the same mysterious images. Yet the identity behind the mask remains hidden, inviting every generation to pause before the screen and wonder whether the next careful question might reveal what all the previous ones could not. In the final part, the story reaches its conclusion by reflecting on what this enduring mystery ultimately tells us about technology, human curiosity, and the quiet power of the unknown. We've explored the wider world that surrounded the hijacking. Now it's time to return to the mystery one final time, reflecting on what decades of investigation have revealed, and what has remained forever beyond the reach of history. The surviving recording begins and ends within moments, yet everything outside its narrow frame remains unseen. The camera reveals only a masked figure, a simple backdrop, scattered props, and a performance whose purpose has never been fully explained. Beyond those visible details lies an empty space where names, locations, preparations, and final departures quietly disappear from history. Decades of careful investigation have illuminated the edges of the event, but the most important moments unfolded beyond the reach of every camera and every official record. Watching the interruption today creates an experience unlike viewing most historical footage. The images carry the unmistakable texture of analog television, while the distorted audio and unfamiliar pacing give the broadcast an atmosphere that feels suspended between humor and uncertainty. Every replay offers the same sounds and the same brief performance, yet the unanswered questions surrounding them shape the experience as much as the recording itself. Viewers are listening not only to what was transmitted, but also to everything the transmission quietly leaves unsaid. With every passing decade, the mystery has shifted further away from the evening when it first appeared. Witnesses have grown older, broadcasting technology has transformed, and the physical equipment involved has largely vanished from everyday use. At the same time, preserved recordings have continued to introduce new audiences to the unanswered case. The event has gradually moved from current news into documented history, then from documented history into something approaching modern folklore, carried forward by curiosity rather than by new discoveries. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not how the broadcast interrupted television, but how completely the people behind it slipped back into ordinary life. If they were never identified, they may have watched the continuing investigation unfold in silence, knowing every public theory revealed only part of the truth. That possibility leaves the story with an unusual sense of distance. The evidence remains before us, the recording survives, and the questions endure, quietly reminding us that even in an age devoted to preserving information, some moments can pass into history while keeping their deepest secrets entirely their own. Throughout this documentary, the search has followed many different paths. We examined the ordinary evening when two television broadcasts were unexpectedly interrupted. We explored the hidden architecture of analog broadcasting, the fictional character chosen by the performer, the technical investigation, the competing theories, and the wider history of signal intrusions. Each step revealed another layer of context, allowing the event to be understood with greater clarity. Yet every new piece of understanding also highlighted the same quiet truth. Knowing more about the circumstances has never meant knowing who stood behind the mask. That distinction is important because history often creates the illusion that enough research will eventually answer every question. Many mysteries do reach satisfying conclusions as forgotten documents appear, witnesses come forward, or overlooked evidence is recognized. The Max Headroom hijacking has followed a different course. The available evidence has been examined by engineers, journalists, historians, archivists, and countless independent researchers. Modern technology has improved recordings that earlier investigators could only study in lower quality. Even so, the identity of the people responsible has remained beyond confirmation. The mystery has endured not because nobody looked, but because every careful search eventually reached the same quiet boundary. There is something deeply human about that boundary. People naturally seek patterns, explanations, and conclusions that bring uncertain stories to a close. An unanswered question leaves the mind unsettled, encouraging repeated reflection long after ordinary events have been forgotten. The Max Headroom hijacking continues to invite that response because it combines familiar technology with extraordinary circumstances. The interruption lasted only moments, yet those moments permanently altered the way many people remembered an otherwise ordinary evening of television. A brief signal crossing an invisible path became a lasting reminder that certainty can disappear much faster than it is restored. Perhaps the unknown broadcaster never intended to create a mystery lasting decades. The original purpose may have been humor, protest, personal expression, technical achievement, or something far more private. Whatever the intention, the result escaped its creators almost immediately. Once the recording entered public memory, it became larger than any individual explanation. Viewers, researchers, and historians each added another layer of interpretation, while the original participants remained silent. Their absence transformed the broadcast into a story shaped as much by unanswered questions as by the performance itself. This quiet transformation explains why the Max Headroom hijacking continues to occupy a unique place in media history. It is remembered not only for its technical achievement or unusual appearance, but because it demonstrates how a mystery can survive even when much of the surrounding evidence is preserved. The recording has never disappeared. The investigation has never been forgotten. The discussions have never entirely ceased. Yet the central answer continues to rest beyond the edge of documented history, inviting careful curiosity while resisting every confident conclusion. Looking back across the decades, it becomes clear that the lasting significance of the Max Headroom hijacking reaches beyond a single unsolved crime. It captures a moment when technology, culture, and human curiosity briefly intersected in an unexpected way. The interruption exposed hidden parts of a broadcasting system that most viewers never considered. At the same time, it revealed something equally important about our relationship with the unknown. Some questions continue to matter even after we accept that complete answers may never arrive. Their value lies not only in resolution, but in the careful search they inspire. The story also reminds us that every generation inherits mysteries from the one before it. Historians preserve documents, archivists protect recordings, engineers explain forgotten technologies, and ordinary people continue asking thoughtful questions. Each contribution strengthens the historical record, even when it does not solve the central puzzle. This quiet collaboration across decades has ensured that the Max Headroom hijacking remains more than a curious footnote in broadcasting history. It has become an enduring example of how shared curiosity can preserve an event long after its immediate importance has faded. There is a certain humility in recognizing the limits of historical knowledge. Modern research methods can restore damaged recordings, organize vast archives, and compare evidence with remarkable precision. Yet no amount of technology can recover information that was never recorded or willingly shared. The silence surrounding the identity of those responsible has therefore become part of the evidence itself. It reminds us that history is built from what survives, while many ordinary decisions, conversations, and actions disappear long before anyone realizes they may one day matter. For that reason, the Max Headroom hijacking continues to feel strangely close despite the passing years. The recording can be watched in moments, but the questions it raises remain difficult to leave behind. We recognize the mask, hear the distorted voice, and observe the unusual performance, yet the people who planned those events remain hidden beyond the frame. That absence gives the mystery its remarkable endurance. Every viewing becomes an invitation to look once more at familiar images, hoping that careful attention might reveal something previously overlooked. In the end, perhaps the greatest lesson is not about television at all. It is about curiosity guided by patience rather than certainty. Some mysteries invite endless speculation, while others encourage careful observation and respect for evidence. The Max Headroom hijacking belongs firmly to the second kind. It rewards thoughtful examination without pretending that every answer is within reach. That balance has allowed the story to survive across changing technologies and changing generations, quietly reminding us that the most enduring mysteries are often those that leave just enough behind to keep honest curiosity alive. As the screen fades to black, the mystery remains exactly where it has always been. Somewhere on an ordinary evening in 1987, one person, or perhaps several, prepared an operation that would enter broadcasting history. They assembled equipment, chose a disguise, rehearsed a performance, and waited for the right moment. For a few brief minutes, they stepped into public view without revealing who they were. Then, almost as quietly as they had appeared, they disappeared again, leaving behind only a recording and a question that has outlived an entire generation of television technology. The world surrounding that broadcast has changed beyond recognition. Analog transmitters have given way to digital networks. Cathode ray televisions have become museum pieces. Broadcast control rooms now rely upon technologies that engineers in 1987 could scarcely have imagined. Yet the surviving footage continues to bridge those different eras. Modern viewers watch the same interruption that audiences witnessed decades ago, discovering that time has altered the surrounding world far more than it has diminished the mystery itself. Perhaps the unknown individuals responsible never expected such an outcome. They may have believed the interruption would be remembered briefly before fading into local history. Instead, their actions became one of the most studied and discussed broadcast intrusions ever recorded. Ironically, the people who achieved worldwide recognition remain entirely anonymous. Their performance traveled across continents and generations, while their identities never followed. That contrast gives the story a quiet sense of permanence. Fame attached itself to the event, while anonymity continued to protect those who created it. There is no dramatic final revelation waiting beyond the last frame of this documentary. No forgotten confession has emerged. No overlooked document has finally answered every question. The mystery closes exactly where history leaves it, with evidence that is genuine, investigation that was sincere, and conclusions that remain incomplete. In many ways, that ending feels appropriate. The Max Headroom Hijacking reminds us that history is not only a collection of answers. It is also a record of the questions that continue to accompany us through time. Somewhere, hidden within the ordinary lives of people long unknown, the complete story almost certainly existed. Whether it disappeared forever or simply remains undiscovered is something we cannot honestly say. And perhaps that final uncertainty is what has allowed this brief interruption to echo across the decades, becoming not just an unsolved broadcast, but one of the most enduring mysteries ever to appear on a silent television screen. The recording ends, but the question never truly does. Long after the analog signals faded and the technology changed, one brief interruption continues to remind us that not every mystery is defined by the answers it gives. Sometimes, what endures is the quiet curiosity left behind, the simple act of looking once more, knowing that history can preserve a moment perfectly while keeping its deepest secret forever.